You know, in the world of true crime, we often think we know exactly where a story is heading. The jealous lover, the greedy business partner, the random break-in. But today, in this explainer, we are looking at 3 solved cold cases that take the most bewildering, genuinely shocking turns imaginable. We're going to break down the evidence, look at the timelines, and uncover the unbelievable truths that finally, against all odds, came to light.
To kick things off, let's take a look at this quote. Everybody wants to make an impression, if you just get through it, and a few people remember your name. These words were actually spoken by Dorian Corey, a prominent figure in the classic 1990 documentary Paris is Burning. And honestly, it perfectly sets the stage for a narrative where the truth just refuses to stay buried. Because little did Dorian know just how chillingly memorable her own legacy was about to become.
Case number 1. The Mummy in the Closet.
So, let's head back to the vibrant Harlem drag ball scene, spanning from the 1960s through the 1990s. Dorian Corey was a renowned dressmaker, a really beloved mentor, and the founder of the House of Corey. But tragically, in August of 1993, Dorian passed away from AIDS complications at just 56 years old. Well, a few months after her passing, her close friend and caretaker, Lois Taylor, was searching through Dorian's massive wardrobe. She was looking for vintage outfits that she could sell as Halloween costumes. But what she found hidden deep behind the racks of clothes wasn't a costume at all. It was this incredibly heavy green and plaid garment bag just resting on the floor.
Now, Lois's discovery in that closet unfolded layer by terrifying layer. When she realized she literally couldn't lift this 135-pound bag, she grabbed a pair of scissors to cut it open. Immediately, a foul-smelling puff of air escaped, and she instantly called the police. When investigators arrived, they carefully peeled back the layers. First, faux leather. Then, thick plastic mixed with vintage beer pull tabs from the 1960s and 70s. And inside all of that, coated in deodorizing baking soda, was a mummified human corpse, curled up in a fetal position, wearing nothing but the tattered remains of blue and white boxer shorts.
So the obvious question here is, who on earth was the mummy in the closet? The corpse was in a pretty horrific state. The skin was splotchy, purple and yellow, the ears had completely disintegrated, and there was a very distinct bullet hole right in the head. Based on the condition, the body had been hidden there for at least 15 years, probably closer to 20. But how do you identify a mummy? Well, miraculously, those layers of plastic and faux leather had actually managed to preserve the body's fingerprints. That gave investigators the exact tool they needed to answer this entirely baffling question.
Those fingerprints matched a man named Robert Bobby Worley. Born in 1938, Bobby had a pretty extensive criminal record, including a 1963 arrest for assault, which resulted in a 3-year prison sentence. Now, shortly after he was released in the late 1960s, his family lost all contact with him. And because of his criminal lifestyle, they hadn't even reported him missing. They just assumed he vanished into thin air. The craziest part? There was absolutely no known logical connection between this ex-convict and a beloved drag performer.
So, the crucial point we have to figure out is the motive. How did Bobby end up shot and stuffed in Dorian's closet? Some of Dorian's friends claimed she must have just been protecting the real killer. Others speculated it was a botched robbery, and there were even rumors of a note attached to the body claiming self-defense, though, to be fair, that was never actually verified by police. But the most compelling theory points directly to a crime of passion. Because Bobby was found only in boxer shorts, investigators heavily suspected a tumultuous intimate relationship between the two. Backing this up, Dorian once wrote a semi-autobiographical story about shooting a lover. And on top of that, Bobby had actually made a drunk phone call to his brother complaining about a massive fight with someone named Dorian right before he vanished.
But guys, here is the absolute most disturbing part of this entire ordeal. Dorian moved to a new apartment in 1988. Think about that for a second. This means that rather than leave the body behind to be discovered by a landlord, Dorian actually packed up and lugged the mummified, heavy corpse of Bobby Worley to a completely new apartment, quietly keeping that gruesome secret until her own death 5 years later.
Moving on to case number 2, the alligator alibi.
Okay, picture this. Jerry Michael Williams, who went by Mike, was this incredibly successful property appraiser in Florida, making a really great living. He had a beautiful wife named Denise, an adorable young daughter, and they were actively planning a Hawaiian cruise. It was this picture-perfect life built entirely from scratch by a man whose parents had sacrificed everything for his education. Then, on the morning of Saturday, December 16, 2000, Mike woke up early to go duck hunting on Lake Seminole. He promised Denise he'd be back by midday so they could celebrate their 6th wedding anniversary, but Mike never came home. After a massive search led by Denise's childhood friend, who also happened to be Mike's best friend, Brian Winchester, they found Mike's abandoned Ford Bronco and his boat. Inside the boat was his shotgun, but Mike was completely gone.
At first, investigators concluded it was just a tragic accident. They figured Mike hit a submerged stump, fell into the water, and drowned. But when his body didn't float to the surface after a few days, the official theory shifted to something much darker. He must have been consumed by the alligators in Lake Seminole. 6 months later, Denise actually had him declared legally dead. But Mike's mother, Cheryl, fiercely rejected this alligator theory. She pointed out a glaring, undeniable flaw in the logic. Alligators rarely, if ever, hunt during the freezing cold month of December. She campaigned relentlessly for years, literally forcing the alligator theory to eventually be thrown out.
But despite all of Cheryl's efforts, the case just went totally cold. Denise actually ended up marrying Mike's best friend, Brian Winchester, in 2005. They were together for years before eventually divorcing, which leads us to a truly terrifying event in 2016. Out of nowhere, Brian snuck into Denise's car, threatened her with a gun, and kidnapped her. Why? Because he was terrified that, following their messy divorce, Denise would start talking to the police about what really happened to Mike 15 years prior. Denise managed to calm him down, she escaped, and she went straight to the police, finally blowing this freezing cold case wide open.
And you want to know the motive for Mike's disappearance? Well, as it often does, it comes down to money. It became crystal clear during the investigation into Brian. It was revealed in court documents that shortly before Mike vanished, a massive $1 million life insurance policy had been taken out on him. And guess who wrote the policy? Brian Winchester, whose day job just happened to be an insurance agent.
Faced with life in prison for the kidnapping, Brian eventually confessed to the murder in exchange for immunity. He revealed that he and Denise had actually been having a secret affair since 1997. He testified that a previous hunting trip, where Mike got stuck in the mud and Brian had to pull him out, is what actually planted the seed for the murder. On the day Mike died, Brian accompanied him out onto the water, pushed him off the boat, and when Mike managed to stay afloat and didn't drown, Brian shot him with his own shotgun. He then dragged the body out and buried Mike just 5 miles from where Mike grew up.
Now, because of his immunity deal for the murder, Brian is only serving 20 years for the kidnapping charge. It's a tough pill to swallow. However, Denise was arrested and she did stand trial. While a life sentence for murder was eventually overturned due to a lack of physical evidence linking her directly to the act itself, her conviction for conspiracy to commit murder was upheld. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison. It was a wildly tragic, twisted path, but Cheryl's relentless motherly instincts ultimately brought the dark truth to light.
And that brings us to our final chapter. Case number 3, the missing beauty queen.
Let's head over to Ocilla, Georgia. This case centers on 30-year-old Tara Faye Grinstead, a former beauty queen who actually used her pageant winnings to fund her college education. She became an 11th grade history teacher and was deeply beloved by her students for her immense dedication and just her radiant personality. Tara spent the afternoon of Saturday, October 22, 2005, helping a young girl prepare for a pageant. Everything was normal. But on Monday, October 24th, the unthinkable happened. This highly dedicated teacher failed to show up for her history class. Investigators rushed over to her home. Her car was parked in the driveway, her cell phone was still inside the house, but her purse and keys were completely missing. There were subtle, eerie signs of a struggle too, an alarm clock shoved under the bed, a broken bedside lamp, and right there on her front stoop, police found a latex glove containing unidentified male DNA. Despite hundreds of tips pouring in and a massive community effort to find her, the investigation dragged on for over a decade with practically zero real leads. The pain of the community was only amplified in 2009 when a man uploaded a video to the internet proclaiming himself the Catch Me Killer. In it, he stated he had murdered 16 women, including Tara. It was horrific, but it was later revealed to be an elaborate, sickeningly cruel hoax by a man named Andrew Haley, who was apparently just desperate for internet fame. By 2010, with no sign of her anywhere, Tara was officially declared legally dead.
This was heavily considered the case that never goes cold, because tips literally kept pouring in year after year, but practically speaking, it was frozen solid. So, who was actually hiding this dark secret the whole time? Well, it wasn't until 2017 that a massive breakthrough finally occurred. A woman named Brooke Sheridan came to the police carrying a very heavy burden. She stated that after months of pestering her boyfriend Bo Dukes, he finally confessed to holding on to a horrific truth about what really happened to the beloved high school teacher. And the twist here is it's absolutely devastating. Bo Dukes revealed that his roommate, a guy named Ryan Duke, no relation by the way, had woken up one morning in 2005 and confessed to accidentally killing Tara.
In a chilling connection, both of these young men had actually been students at the very high school where Tara taught. Ryan had allegedly broken into Tara's home to burglarize it, was surprised when she woke up, and strangled her. Ryan then went back and asked Bo for help. Using Bo's truck, they transported Tara's body to a pecan orchard owned by Bo's family. There, they burned her remains in a fire pit for 2 agonizing days until they were unrecognizable, before finally burying the bone fragments.
When you look at this timeline, it is just staggering how long they kept their mouth shut. Bo Dukes was eventually sentenced to 25 years in prison for his role in helping cover up the murder and moving the body. Ryan Duke, who is charged with the actual murder, is currently awaiting trial. But finally, after 12 excruciating years of waiting, wondering, and searching, the small town of Ocilla got the heartbreaking answers they had been looking for.
Part 4. Time reveals all secrets. You know, these 3 chilling narratives perfectly demonstrate how, in the world of true crime, patience and time are often the absolute greatest detectives we have. Whether it's a mummified body kept hidden in a closet for decades, a $1 million betrayal brilliantly disguised by Florida's local wildlife, or a tragic high school secret buried deep in a Georgia orchard, the truth just has this incredible way of clawing its way back to the surface eventually. So as we wrap up this explainer, it leaves us with one deeply unsettling thought. If decades-old mysteries can suddenly unravel thanks to a careless word, an unexpected discovery, or just a guilty conscience, what other dark, long-hidden secrets are walking right beside us today, just waiting for the simple passage of time to be revealed?